and welcome to Temple Talk. Today is 12th day of the month of Kislev, 5780. It's the 10th of December, 2019. This is Yitzchak Reuven. I am alone today in the studio. I'm back. Let's start with that. I'm back. I was away for a few weeks, but I am back. Very happy to be back here in the land of Israel. Very happy to be back here behind the microphone. Rabbi Richman, however, has changed places with me. He now is in America, and he has some speaking engagements. Rabbi Richman and his son, Hillel Richman, the archaeologist. They spoke yesterday evening in Arkansas, and they'll be speaking again this coming Sunday, the 15th of December, in Lubbock, Texas, and again on Tuesday, the 17th of December in Loveland, Colorado. So if you are anywhere near those locations or have the ability to get there, those two dates are next week, and I'm sure it will be fascinating. What are they talking about? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Hillel Richman, who was researcher and former supervisor of Ancient Jerusalem Sifting Project and Temple Mount Sifting Project in Jerusalem, presents the light of the menorah. The menorah is the ancient and modern symbol of Israel. Why is the menorah such a central theme for the Jewish people? Archaeologist Hillel Richman's fascinating presentation, The Light of the Menorah, explores the history and meaning of the menorah and illuminates the ancient and modern symbolism through the lens of history and archaeology, tracing the concept of the menorah from the biblical commandment through ancient and modern times. Hillel shares intriguing and original ideas that shed new light on the light of the menorah. And Rabbi Richman will be speaking about the eternal spiritual significance of Hanukkah, which is coming up in a mere, just under 2 weeks. Hanukkah commemorates the ancient victory of the few over the many and the strength of the power of light over the forces of darkness. How do we connect these ideas to the reality of our modern world? The Temple Institute's International Director, Rabbi Chaim Richman, sheds new light on the upcoming holiday of Chanukah and its universal message of hope, renewal, and spiritual fulfillment. Again, they'll be speaking next Sunday, December 15th in Lubbock, Texas, and next Tuesday, December 17th in Loveland, Colorado. Details can be found on the Temple Institute's website, templeinstitute.org, and on the Temple Institute's Facebook page. And I'd like to add that Rabbi Richman will also be speaking in Lubbock on next Sunday, the 15th of December. This coming Shabbat, Parshat Vayishlach, and the continuing adventures of Yaakov, Avinu, our father Jacob, and his sons, who at the beginning of the Parsha, the beginning of Vayishlach, still number 11. And of course, his 12th son, Benjamin, is born in this Parsha. He's the first and only of Yaakov's 12 sons to actually be born inside the land of Israel. All the others, of course, whose birth we read about last week, were born in Haran, outside of the land of Israel, and in the hometown of Lavan, who was Yaakov's father-in-law. Troubled relationship that we read all about in last week's Parsha, which concluded with a confrontation between the two at Mount Gilad, Har Galed, as Yaakov had left, after 20 years, had left the house of Lavan and was returning home to the land of Israel and to the God who had promised him that he would protect him and clothe him and feed him and safeguard him while he was away. And sure enough, that's what the God of Israel did. And now Yaakov was on his way back with his 2 wives, their handmaidens, and his 11 sons and his daughter Dinah, back to the land of Israel. And he didn't say goodbye. He left without saying goodbye, and this very much injured Lavan, who chased after him. He was injured. He was a little bit hurt by this, but he also was suspicious. What was Yaakov leaving with? What did he take? Anyway, they meet, there's a confrontation, and the God of Yaakov, Hashem, spoke to Lavan in a dream just before the confrontation and said, watch what you say. Don't say anything bad about Yaakov. He's my boy. I'm his God. So you just watch yourself and everything will be okay. And of course, there was the controversy over the terafim, these idols that Lavan was searching for, that he accused Yaakov of taking. And Yaakov said, no, nobody took them. But Yaakov didn't know that actually Rachel, Lavan's daughter, had in fact taken them before they left. We know it, but Yaakov didn't know it. And it's not clear why she took them. Some of our sages say that she wanted to rid her father of idolatry. Some say that she knew that God would not speak to Lavan if he was in possession of these idols. And she wanted God to speak to Lavan so that, as we just said, so that God would warn Lavan not to mess with Yaakov. And so she took the idols so that her father would be able to receive an important warning from Hashem. And these are both reasons given, but the Torah itself never clears up the issue. But after the confrontation, at which they finally came to an agreement, made peace, and actually had an understanding that Yaakov has no intention of ever setting foot back in the lands of Lavan, and Lavan would never, he agreed to never enter into the land of Israel or pass this Mount Gilad, and they made this pact, had an agreement. Yaakov went on his way, and just upon arriving at the borders of the land of Israel, he was met by an encampment of angels who greeted him back to the Holy Land. And that brings us to this week's parsha of Vayishlach, and he sent. So Yaakov now is ready, preparing, I should say, for this big confrontation that he's been anticipating for 20 years, the confrontation between him and his brother Esav, who, as we recall 20 years ago, swore that he was going to kill Yaakov upon his father's death, because for all the other not so positive qualities that Esav possessed, he did possess respect for his father, kibud av, very important quality, and he was not going to shed blood of his own brother as long as his father was alive. We have to give him that. It's an important quality. So Yaakov is very fearful, and he comes up with a plan. And his plan is basically threefold. He has messengers go out and search for Esav and bring to him a whole slew of gifts in the form of animals, flocks, sheep, goats, camels, donkeys, and in order to make amends, in order to greet Esav and say, Yaakov's back, and he wants to make peace. He also prayed to God that he would be delivered from the hand of his brother Esav. And he also split up his encampment into two parts, so that if one part of his encampment, meaning his family, is attacked by Esav, the other part can flee. And so basically, he's preparing for either a peaceful conclusion by bringing gifts, some kind of gifts of appeasement, or for war. And he's also praying to God that it all will work out for the best. And this is really diplomacy, statesmanship that he's employing. And guess what? It's the same type of diplomacy that Israel employs today. We extend our hand in peace. We're giving. We prepare ourselves for war. And all the time we are in contact with our Heavenly Father and pray for peace and pray for good results and pray that God will protect us from our enemies. And believe me, it is a method founded by our father Jacob that works to this day. You have to be prepared for all contingencies, and we always have to be in dialogue with Hashem and asking for Hashem's help. As Yaakov said, he said, not for anything that I've done, not that I deserve your help. Let's try to find the actual words that he uses. It's very beautiful what he says. I am in chapter 32 of the book of Genesis. Verse 10, then Yaakov said, God of my father Abraham and God of my father Yitzchak, Hashem, who said to me, return to your land and to your relatives, and I will do good with you. He's reminding God of what he had told Yaakov before he left the house of Lavan in a dream. I have been diminished by all the kindnesses and by all the truth that you have done. Meaning Yaakov is saying, I didn't deserve any of this. I haven't earned your love or your protection or your kindness, but you've blessed me with it. By all the truth that you have done your servant, for with my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Rescue me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav, for I fear him, lest he come and strike me down, mother and children. And you had said, I will surely do good with you, and I will make your offspring like the sand of the sea, which is too numerous to count. Now he's recalled God's promise while before Yaakov even left the land of Israel, while he was first fleeing from Esav. So he's covered all his bases. And of course Hashem is going to come through. But Yaakov feels like he can't rely on what he sees as a miracle here, so he makes preparations for all different possibilities, again, with gifts for appeasement, preparing himself for possible war, and of course praying to Hashem. And after he's divided his camps and done all these things, we have a famous classic story that he is left alone on the far side, that is on the eastern side of the Yabok River, the Jabbok River, and where he stays for the night. And during that night, he is confronted by a man. Let's pick it up again from the verse. Again, the same chapter 32, and now we're in we'll start with verse 23. But he got up that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 handmaids, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. And when he took them and had them cross over the stream, he sent over his possessions. Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he perceived that he could not overcome him, he struck the socket of his hip. So Yaakov's hip socket was dislocated as he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for dawn has broken. And he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. He said to him, what is your name? He replied, Yaakov. He said, no longer will it be said that your name is Yaakov, but Israel, Yisrael. For you have striven with the divine and with man and have overcome. Then Yaakov inquired, and he said, divulge, if you please, your name. And he said, why then do you inquire of my name? And he blessed him there. So Yaakov called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen a divine place, for I have seen a divine face to face, yet my life was spared. The sun rose for him as he passed Penuel, and he was limping on his hip. Therefore the children of Israel are not to eat the displaced sinew on the hip socket to this day, because he struck Yaakov's hip socket on a displaced sinew. So he wrestles, he has a confrontation with a man. It's very interesting that the Torah itself refers to this this person as Ish, a man, although all our sages understand that this is an angel who he's wrestling with, because if it's a man, then, well, who is it and why is he there? If it's an angel, and it certainly seems like he's an angel, because he gives him a blessing because he had to leave by daybreak, because apparently he had another job at daybreak and another angelic job to fulfill, so he couldn't hang around. And he's able to change Yaakov's name to Israel. He couldn't do that without God's permission or God's instruction. And so, yes, it's an angel, even though he's referred to as Ish. And significantly, Yaakov struggles with him, and it's basically a draw. But it's a victory for Yaakov because he's not overcome, and it's a victory because he earns the name Israel, which commemorates this quality that he can wrestle with man and he can wrestle with God, and prevail. And basically, that concept of wrestling with God in a good way, in a positive way, of working with, we saw that with Abraham, who, when God divulged his plan to destroy the city of Sodom, Abraham said, wait a minute, what if there's 50 righteous people? And so on and so forth. We all recall the story. So we know that not only the disposition of Abraham and his children, but really our responsibility is to engage God in dialogue, engage God in seeking justice and seeking righteousness and seeking truth. Not to be passive. That's not our position. That's not our job, to be engaged. So we continue. As we know, Yaakov then meets Esav, and all is good, and they hug and they kiss, and Esav has no demands of Yaakov, and he's not seeking revenge. And the words, the Hebrew words in the Torah that say, and they hugged and they kissed, and Esav kissed him in the official tikkun, how we pronounce the words when we're reading them. There are certain dots over each of the letters of the word. Let me just I don't want to make a mistake here. So let me just look for this and get it exactly right. Where is it? Here it is. 33, chapter 33, verse 4. Esav ran toward him, embraced him, fell upon his neck, and kissed him. And the Hebrew is Vayarotz ya Esav likrato vayachabkehu vayipol al tzavarav vayishakehu vayivku. Vayishakehu, the word vayishakehu, and he kissed him, has dots over it. And our sages say that means there's a question here. What's the meaning of this? The literal meaning is that he kissed him. And some of our sages say that he actually tried to bite him. But Yaakov's neck was miraculously turned hard as marble, and all he could do was break his teeth on his neck. Other sages say, no, the miracle here is that he embraced him and kissed him with all his heart, because he had truly forgiven him, which is no less miraculous, seriously, than the idea that Yaakov's neck suddenly became hard as a rock, and Esav's teeth were not able to pierce his neck. Anyway, that's the story up till now. This long anticipated confrontation ends up peacefully. It's very beautiful. Let's take it at face value. It's a very beautiful thing. And then Esav goes on his way, and basically the whole conflict and confrontation and anger over the blessing of the firstborn and the birthright seems to be resolved, forgotten, and let go. And Esav goes his way, Yaakov goes his way, which is into the land where he leads his family to the city of Shechem, where the next confrontation is about to take place. And that, of course, leads us to the next story. This week's Parashat Vayishlach seems to be full of confrontations and troubles. We're learning very quickly that Yaakov's life, as he'll say to Pharaoh, a little getting ahead of us now, but in a few weeks' time, in our reading, he'll be saying to Pharaoh, my life has been short and very troubled. And you know what? It was very troubled. His Abraham and Yitzchak, they didn't have the confrontations and the troubles that Yaakov seemed to greet Yaakov all throughout his life. They didn't have troubles with fathers-in-law like Yaakov did, or with a brother like Yaakov did, or, as we're going to learn that in a minute, with the people of Shechem like Yaakov did. His life was troubled. And again, each of the avot, each of the patriarchs, the three patriarchs are their doings, their actions, what they had to deal with, what they had to confront are simanim lebanim. They're all lessons for we, their children, to learn from and to gain from and to understand as we go through our lives as individuals and as a nation. So all these troubles that befell Yaakov and all these confrontations that he was met with are important tools for us to learn from and to gain by, using his experiences to make our way through our lives as individuals and as a nation. I'm hearing the music now, so I see it's time to stop, but I'll be right back. Don't go away. Temple Talk. Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven. Today is the 12th day of the month of Kislev, 5780, December 10th, 2019. I'm alone. I repeat, I'm alone in a studio. Rabbi Richman is in the United States, where he's on a short speaking tour. And he spoke last night in Arkansas, and he'll be speaking again next Sunday, the 15th of December in Lubbock, Texas, and next Tuesday, the 17th of December in Loveland, Colorado. For more details, please go either to our website, templeinstitute.org, or to our Facebook page. We've been talking about Parshat Vayishlach. We've been talking about the trials and tribulations of Yaakov Avinu, our patriarch, our father Jacob, and how we're to learn from his experiences as well as the experiences of Abraham and Yitzchak, and gain from them and use the experience that we gain from their experiences in our own lives in order to do what needs to be done the right way. And we just been talking about the Parsha Vayishlach, and we just came up to the incident that took place in the city of Shechem, known today to many people as Nablus, known to the Arabs as Nablus. Nablus was actually the shortening of a name that the Romans gave it it was Annapolis or something like that. I'm forgetting now exactly, but Annapolis, polis in Greek meant city, and so the Arabs who cannot pronounce a P but pronounce it B shortened it to Nablus. So that's why it's called Nablus to many people today, but it was Shechem long before it was Nablus, and it's still Shechem today, and it always will be Shechem. And here's where we're going to pick up the book of Genesis, chapter 34, verse 1. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to look over the daughters of the land. Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the region, saw her. He took her, lay with her, and violated her. He became deeply attached to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the maiden and appealed to the maiden's emotions. So Shechem spoke to Hamor, his father, saying, Take me this girl for a wife. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, while his sons were with his cattle in the field. So Jacob kept silent until their arrival. Hamor, Shechem's father, went out to Jacob to speak with him. Jacob's sons arrived in the field when they heard. The men were distressed and were fired deeply with indignation, for he had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with the daughter of Jacob. Such a thing may not be done. Hamor spoke with them, saying, Shechem, my son, longs deeply for your daughter. Please give him to her as a wife, and intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves, and among us you shall dwell. The land will be before you. Settle and trade in it and acquire property in it. So, after his son rapes Yaakov's daughter, who was a very young girl, then Hamor wants to make a deal with Yaakov and with his sons. Let's just make nice now. Let's just intermarry and share the land. So Jacob's sons answers in verse 13. Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor cleverly, and they spoke because he had defiled their sister Dinah. And they proposed to Shechem and Hamor that they can't possibly do what they're proposing because the men of Shechem are not circumcised, and they can only mix with people who are circumcised. But if they agree to be circumcised, then the deal's on. So Shechem is so in love. Shechem is so in love with Dinah that he says, fine. And they go back and convince all the men of the city of Shechem to be circumcised. And 3 days later, as we read again, in chapter 34, verse 25, now, and it came to pass on the third day while they were in pain from the circumcision, that two of Jacob's sons, Simon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword, and they came upon the city confidently, and killed every male. And Hamor and Shechem and his son, they killed at the point of sword. Then they took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain, and they plundered the city which had defiled their sister, their flocks, their cattle, their donkeys, whatever was in the town, whatever was in the field, they took. All their wealth, all their children and wives, they took captive, and they plundered as well as everything in the house. Jacob said to Simon and to Levi, you have discomposed me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and among the Perizzites. I am few in number, and should they band together and attack me, I will be annihilated, I and my house. Okay. Lots of times, people are uncomfortable talking about this story. It's not a pretty story. Obviously, it's a horrible crime that was committed by Shechem, despicable crime, and I think a lot of people would like, the response of the children of Israel to be something, I don't know, more modern, more diplomatic. I don't know what, but what did you expect them to do? What would you do? Their sister was violated. She was raped by this stranger. And then the stranger had the audacity to come and to say, let's make peace and live together as brothers and sisters. You marry our women, we'll marry your women. First of all, this was not the promise that God had promised for Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. This was not the future that he had promised them, to mix with another nation, a Canaanite nation in the land. Not at all. Secondly, you do not allow such a thing like this to happen without a price to be paid. And what could they have done besides what they did? What could they have done besides what they did? So the question then is, why was it only Shimon and Levi who entered the city and killed all the men? Well, it was obvious, we read earlier, that all the brothers spoke, deceitfully to Shechem and Hamor, meaning they all were in on this plan. They all had this idea. So why these two? It's not clear, except that it may be that they wanted only two to go in, knowing that a larger number could have, aroused the suspicion. They could have made noise. They could have been seen. I would say that that's a pretty reasonable answer to our question. It's interesting because these two brothers, Shimon and Levi, as we'll know, Yaakov never quite got over this. And he would later, upon his deathbed, when he was giving blessings to all his sons, he said specifically to Shimon and Levi that you will not have a nachalah, you'll not have an inheritance in the land because of what you did, because you were violent. He didn't approve of their violence. And ultimately, we know that Levi did not get a nachalah, did not get inheritance in the land. He instead got an inheritance serving as Levites and priests, Kohanim, in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple. Shimon did get an inheritance, but his inheritance, which was in the Negev to the south of the inheritance of Yehuda, Judah, who was a much more powerful tribe than him, would soon be absorbed into the tribe of Yehuda. So he would his inheritance would vanish with time. So why is that? Why did one get the fate of being able to serve in the Mikdash and the other one to kind of vanish? So let's look at these two brothers a few generations later, when we're in the desert and we have the incident of the daughters of Midian after the prophet, the heathen prophet Bilam attempted to and failed to curse the children of Israel. He came up with this plot to entice and to cause the men of Israel to sin with the daughters of Midian. And who was it who actually engaged with the daughters of Midian? It was the tribe of Shimon, including the prince of the tribe of Shimon, Simon. The children of this Shimon, who with Levi had killed all the men of Shechem in order to defend the honor and the purity, the honor of their sister and the purity of the nation. And so these few generations later, they were to fall victim to the same crime that they were indignant about in the story of Shechem. And who was it that stopped this horrible incident? It was Pinchas, who was a great-grandson of Levi. He was a Levite, would become a Kohen, a priest, after he did this. So it was Levi who maintained the strength to fight against any indignation, any violation of the purity of the nation of Israel, whereas Shimon fell victim to this sin. So we see that Levi, in the case of Shechem, was acting with the full purity of his heart, where maybe Shimon was a man who certainly was wholeheartedly defending the honor of his sister and the purity of the nation, but he had a passion in him that he wasn't always able to control. Anyway, getting back now to Jacob's response, Yaakov's response, that's also raises a few eyebrows. He said, "You have discomposed me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and among the Perizzites. I am few in number, and should they band together and attack me, I will be annihilated, I and my household." Okay, well, what was your plan? I don't know what, it's not clear. We don't know. We don't know. In all seriousness, we don't know what Yaakov had in mind. Had he agreed? Had he agreed to this plan that the brothers had presented, had agreed to with Shechem and Hamor, this plan which the brothers agreed to only deceitfully in order to trick Shem and Hamor? Had Yaakov actually agreed to that? I can't imagine that he did. I don't know. It's not clear. We're not told what his plan was. However, the brothers' response to their father is so sharp, so short, so to the point, and so harsh that it's really end of story. And it goes like this. Chapter 34, verse 31, "And they said, 'Should he treat our sister like a harlot?'" Seriously, that's the end of the story. They did what they had to do. Was it pretty? Maybe not. Can you come with would the UN stand for this? No. There'd be the Hague, the International Court. Everybody would be against Israel if it happened today. But it really was the only response that they were able to take. Anything less would have been self-destructive, would have been a crime against the nation of Israel, and it would have been an outrage against God. So they did what they had to do, nothing less. Nothing less than that, nothing more than that. They did what needed to be done. And if you're wondering what God's opinion about this is, then let's continue. Chapter 35, verse 1, God said to Jacob, "Arise, go to Beit El and dwell there, and make an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from Esav your brother." So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Discard the alien gods that are in your midst, cleanse yourself and change your clothes. Then come, let us go to Beit El. I will make there an altar to God who answered me in my time of distress and was with me on the road that I traveled." So they gave to Jacob all the alien gods that were in their possession, as well as the rings that were in her ears, and Jacob buried them underneath the terebinth near Shechem. They set out, and there fell a godly terror on the cities which were around them, so that they did not pursue Jacob's sons. So God caused terror, fear of Yaakov and his sons to fall upon all the surrounding nations, the surrounding towns, because it makes sense. You don't mess with these guys. Look what two of his sons destroyed an entire prosperous city. They killed every last man. They took every possession of that city. They did it in a day. You don't mess with these people. So Yaakov was afraid that, the brazen action of his sons was going to cause the nations to rise up against him. But no, God obviously approved of what his sons had done. How do we know that? Because God put the fear of Yaakov and his sons in the hearts of these other nations. It's a good lesson to learn. That strength speaks. This is a lesson that our prime minister, he's still prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has said many times. He says it out loud. He says it clearly. Strength commands respect. When Israel acts strong, speaks strong, presents itself with strength, we get respect. And people like strength. Nations like strength. You want allies. You need to project strength by showing weakness, by being over anxious to reach out and to compromise and to give up things that you shouldn't give up because you want peace and because you want to gain favor in the eyes of the nations. That doesn't give you peace. It doesn't give you respect. It doesn't give you anything except death, destruction, terror, and isolation. And we've seen that in our history, our modern history, certainly of the past 25 years, when Israel was 25 years ago, when Israel was bending over backward, giving up portions of our inheritance, God's promise, in order to make peace. And what could be more beautiful than that? We're so sincere that we're willing to forego what belongs to us in order to make peace. It didn't give us peace. It gave us terror. It didn't win the hearts of the nations. It isolated us among the nations. Strength is what speaks. Strength is what makes you stronger. And this is an important lesson that Yaakov needed to learn, an important lesson that we needed to learn. You know, he was able to gain the respect. Why did his brother Esav hug and kiss him? His brother Esav understood that Yaakov had just wrestled with an angel and overcome that angel. And by the way, happens to be very interesting that when that man came and wrestled with Yaakov, that hold on a second, I'm going to find it. It's a very beautiful little thing here, and I have to find it. Here it is. When it says, "Vayivater Yaakov levado vayavek ish imo ad alut hashachar," this is back in chapter 32 and verse 25, and Yaakov was left alone, and he struggled with a man until the break of dawn. Ish imo, with a man. The Baal Turim, one of the commentators on the Torah, says Ish imo in gematria, that is in the numerical value of the letters of the words Ish imo, man with him, has the same numerical value of Esav Edom. Esav Edom, of course, Esav his brother, and Edom was the other name given to Esav because he was Admoni, he was born very red and ruddy. So this angel, man, we're not really sure who he is, but according to this understanding, he was not Esau himself, but he was the angel of Esav. He was angel's guardian angel. So Esav understood when he met Yaakov, and he understood that his guardian angel was not able to overcome Yaakov. So this is why Esav hugged and kissed. Yes, he did it with all his heart, because he saw that his brother was strong. He saw that his brother could stand up for himself, defend himself, and prevail. And that gained his respect, and that gained his love. And so the actions of Yaakov's sons, Levi and Shimon, gained for Israel, for Yaakov, the respect, if not the love, but the respect of the other nations in the land of Canaan. And today, we've learned in the modern state of Israel from its inception that it's strength that gains us the love of the nations that otherwise would not love us but would be against us. And even if they don't love us, they respect us. I'm not talking about those peoples and people who love Israel because the Torah tells all the nations to love Israel because he who blesses Israel will be blessed. I'm talking about our enemies who become our friends and our allies because we act with strength. And that is respected. And that's what works in the world. And that is a big lesson that our father Yaakov learned from his sons. And that is a big lesson that we always need to keep with us today. And speaking of our Prime Minister, who, as I said, has repeated this message to the Israeli public many times. This is why he does what he does and when he doesn't. And when he does act without strength, then we pay the price. When Israel's leaders act without strength, then there's a price to be paid. Speaking of that, yes, it looks like we're going to be going to a third election here in Israel. Kind of crazy, huh? But that's Israel. That's the way it goes. I'm hearing the music. Thank you so much for bearing with me today. Temple Talk.